Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to absolutely flip the way you see the world around you. Think about it. Every single day, you are literally bombarded by the logos of massive global brands. Coca-Cola, Apple, FedEx, Amazon, Toyota, they're everywhere. But, well, what if I told you that they have hidden messages, clever little symbols, secret numbers, and just brilliant psychological tricks embedded right into them? And honestly, the craziest part, you've probably missed almost all of them. Okay, let's dive into this. You look at them every day, but have you really seen them? These massive, multi-billion-dollar brands, they don't just throw a few shapes and letters together and call it a day. No way. They use highly calculated design strategies. They're actually playing a visual game with you, using psychological tricks that are hiding entirely in plain sight. They want their brand to stick in your mind, and sometimes the absolute best way to do that is to give you a puzzle you didn't even know you were solving. So today, we're going to break down these visual tricks by decoding the secrets right before your eyes. By the time we finish, I guarantee you will never look at a delivery truck or a chocolate bar the exact same way again. So, let's kick things off with our first category of secrets. Act 1, the illusion of plain sight. Let's start with what is easily one of the most famous examples of hidden design in the world, the FedEx logo. It's this brilliant design trick called negative space. Basically, the empty area around or between the letters forms its own completely separate shape, completely tricking your eye. Now, I want you to focus your attention right on the space between the capital E and the lowercase x. Do you see it? Nestled perfectly in that negative white space is a clean, distinct arrow pointing right. And once you see it, it is totally impossible to unsee it. This wasn't an accident. This brilliant use of negative space subconsciously screams speed, direction, movement, and efficiency. Literally everything you want from a shipping company. But hey, FedEx isn't the only one playing mind games with the space between letters. Take a look at the Hershey's Kisses wordmark. At first glance, just a friendly, recognizable font. But I want you to shift your focus for a second. Don't look at the letters themselves. Look at the space between the capital K and the capital I. Right there, tilting just slightly to the left, is a tiny, perfectly formed silhouette of a Hershey's Kiss chocolate. It's such a brilliant little Easter egg. Sometimes the secret you're supposed to find isn't drawn into the logo at all, it's just carved right out of the space around it. And that brings us to the French retail giant Carrefour. At first glance, you're just looking at a red arrow pointing left and a blue shape pointing right. But let's look at the negative space again, right in the dead center. Those red and blue shapes are deliberately designed to carve out this massive, subtle white C right in the middle. It is literally hiding its own first letter in plain sight. It's a beautifully dynamic logo that just completely changes the second your brain switches from looking at the colored shapes to looking at the white background. Let's move along and see how this builds in Act 2, messages baked into shapes. We're stepping away from negative space now and looking at logos where the actual physical shapes and lines carry layers of hidden meaning. So the Amazon logo. We literally see it on millions of cardboard boxes sitting on our porches. At first glance, it just looks like a simple, friendly underline that forms a smile, right? But notice the specific placement of that curved orange arrow. It starts exactly at the letter A and points directly to the letter Z. It intentionally represents their massive inventory, basically communicating that, hey, Amazon sells everything from A to Z. And then, because the arrow arcs upward and creates a little dimple at the end, it forms a smile, creating the subconscious feeling of customer satisfaction. Just brilliant. Now let's look at Baskin-Robbins. It's bright, it's fun, it's super playful. But let's break this design down. Look really closely at the pink sections of the B and the R. Notice anything specific? Those pink sections perfectly form the number 31. And that is not just some random stylistic choice. That number is a direct reference to Baskin-Robbins' historic foundational idea, offering 31 flavors of ice cream, literally one for every single day of the month. By splitting the colors on the monogram, they managed to keep a clean, modern look while totally honoring their most famous piece of company heritage. Okay, let's step it up a notch with the Toyota logo. On the surface, you see 3 interlocking ovals. Seems simple enough. But watch what happens as we break it down step by step. The overlapping rings can actually be traced to spell out the entire brand name. The top and outer loops give you the T. The outer ring is the O. The inner intersecting lines form the Y. The central shape gives you the A. Now, whether this was the primary intention of the original designer or just a really happy accident that they embraced, either way, it's widely recognized today as an absolute masterclass in layered symbolism hidden right within a simple geometric badge. All right, let's shift gears back to some chocolate. Here is the iconic Toblerone packaging. The logo features a beautifully detailed illustration of the famous Matterhorn mountain, but I have a challenge for you. Look incredibly closely at the shading and the snowcaps on the mountain. There is something organic hiding inside the crags of the rock. Can you spot the hidden silhouette? Just take a second and really look. Did you see it? If you look right in the center of the mountain, standing on its hind legs is a bear. The bear is the historic symbol of Bern, Switzerland, which happens to be the city where Toblerone originated. The name of the city itself is even historically tied to the word for bear. So the designers ingeniously blended the famous geographical landmark of the Matterhorn with the civic pride of their hometown animal, hiding a piece of their literal heritage right there on the candy shelf. Now, what's really interesting as we move forward is how popular theories can totally clash with actual history. This is Act 3, Brand Myths and Hidden Histories. For example, let's talk about BMW. Is that famous blue and white logo really meant to be a spinning airplane propeller against a clear blue sky? I mean, if you ask almost any car enthusiast, they will confidently tell you yes, absolutely, it's a direct nod to their aviation roots. But the reality? It's actually a bit more complicated than that. So the crucial point here is distinguishing a really good myth from the cold, hard facts. On the left, we have the popular myth of the spinning airplane propeller. This actually comes from a super famous 1929 BMW advertisement that superimposed their logo over an actual spinning propeller. It looked incredibly cool and the public completely ran with it. But on the right, we have the strict historical fact. The logo, which was actually created long before that ad, is quite simply a representation of the state colors of Bavaria, blue and white. Because trademark laws at the time strictly forbade using national coats of arms for commercial use, they just arranged the colors in an alternating inverted pattern. The whole propeller story? It's a fantastic piece of accidental marketing, but historically speaking, it is just a myth. We actually see a really similar thing with Adidas. Back in the 1940s, their famous 3 stripes were introduced. Today, you'll hear people swear that the slanted 3 stripes represent a mountain, symbolizing all the massive challenges that athletes have to overcome. And while that's a highly motivating, super popular modern interpretation, if we look back at the official history, those 3 stripes were originally added to their early track shoes simply to bind the shoe together and provide structural stability. The company later evolved into the trefoil identity in the 70s and eventually embraced the slanted 3-bar logo we know today. So over time, a basic structural necessity morphed into a globally recognized identity, and the fans ultimately assigned it that poetic meaning of overcoming a mountain. So why do these multi-billion-dollar companies even bother hiding these details? Let's pull back the curtain on how our brains work in our final act, Act 4, the psychology of secrets. It really boils down to 5 key psychological reasons. First up, memorability. A logo with a hidden twist literally forces your brain to process it just a fraction of a second longer, which makes it significantly easier to remember. Second, brand storytelling. As we saw with Toblerone and Amazon, a simple, clean symbol can communicate an entire company's heritage or their whole inventory. Third, curiosity. As humans, we're just hardwired to enjoy discovering things, solving puzzles, and noticing cool details that other people miss. Fourth, and honestly perhaps most importantly, emotional connection. When you spot that hidden arrow in FedEx or the 31 in Baskin-Robbins, you suddenly feel like you're in on an inside secret. It actually creates a tiny jolt of dopamine and a sudden positive bond with that brand. And finally, visual simplicity. The absolute best logos in the world can communicate multiple, complex ideas without ever becoming cluttered or complicated. We've covered a ton of ground today in this explainer. We went from the speed and direction hiding between the letters of FedEx all the way to the massive A to Z inventory of Amazon. We pulled the number 31 right out of the Baskin-Robbins monogram, spelled Toyota with some simple geometric rings, and even found a bear hiding out in the Swiss Alps. We also fully debunked that famous BMW propeller myth. So I really want you to think about it for a second. Which of these visual tricks completely caught you off guard? Which one will you just never be able to unsee? Because honestly, the craziest part about this whole shebang isn't just that these secrets exist. It's the fact that we have all been looking at these incredibly famous, massive brand logos for years, sometimes literally decades, without ever truly seeing them. So as you go about your day-to-day, I've got a challenge for you. The next time you see a famous logo on a billboard or storefront or even just a candy wrapper, don't just look at it. Look between the lines. Question the everyday world around you, because you never know what wild secrets are hiding right in front of your face. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes open.